noun phase. Today, I would like to share with you some information regarding the English language and how we interpret it. You all know that you have poetry and prose. These are the two kinds of sections that you have. At the same time, you have a lot of unseen passages that you attempt in your examinations. Now, when you read literature or when you read a particular passage which describes something, there are certain words and there are certain techniques and styles of writing which are used to explain a certain experience or an effect. It sort of makes the situation, whatever is being described, very alive for the reader with the help of words. There is no visual to it, but it's only words. What are these words? In our understanding as well as in our reading. Now, this would be known as something known as figures of speech. What are figures of speech? Today we are going to discuss that, and let's see how we go about it. I'm sure you will understand it and you will find it very interesting. I'm going to discuss it with the help of examples and at the same time explain it to you briefly, of course. But when you read literature, when you understand literature, then you will see these words, these things, these kind of instances coming alive for you. So pay attention when you are reading very carefully so that you are able to recognize and understand the concepts behind it. So let us look at the figure of speeches, or as here this chart says, figurative language. So what is a simile? I think you all know what a simile is. And a simile is a comparison of two unlike things. That means these two things are perhaps very, very different. You would not be able to compare the two, but at the same time, you still feel that they are possible to be compared. So then, using the AS, these are the, so her face was white as a sheet. Now, these are two unlike things. A person's face is being compared to a sheet. I have taught you the poem My Mother at 66 for class 12. And you may have seen the phrase in the poem which says, her face was pale and worn as a late winter's moon. Now, the poet's mother's age was being compared to the moon. These are again two very unlikely subjects, yet the comparison has been brought forth. Now, what is the example that is being given here? Let us look at the example. He was as angry as a hornet defending its hive. Now, we all know a hornet is a bird, and when somebody tries to attack the nest or perhaps to enter its hive, or maybe it could be another bird or it could even be a human or any kind of predator, then the bird gets very agitated. So now the comparison is that he was as angry. That means anger is being compared to a hornet, to a bird. Very unlikely situations, however. Next example, which is that of a metaphor. The next figure of speech that we are looking at is again between similes and metaphors. Let us look at the differences here. Now, this is a direct comparison of two very unlike things. What are these two things? It could be direct comparison. She is a bear when she wakes up in the morning. Now, how can a person be a bear? It is not she is like a bear. It is that she is a bear. So, she turns into a bear, obviously. It sounds very hilarious. However, bring these things together and to make it sound that they are one. So, again, it is two unlike things. So, they are not similar. They are not like each other. They are very, very different. She is a bear when she wakes up in the morning. All right, now let us look at the next. These three kind of alliteration is the third one, but before I do this, I would like to also inform you that these are the likely figures of speeches that you will get when you have to identify certain devices, poetic devices which are used in poetry, and at the same time, it is also possible that you may find it in prose. You are quite likely to find it in prose as well. Let us look at alliteration now. What is an alliteration? Now, when words that start with the same sound are used close together in a phrase or in a sentence. That means they start with the same sound. Now, it could be any kind of sound. Let us see an example. Please plan to be present at Paul's pirate party. So, please plan to be present at Paul's pirate party. So, the P sound is highlighted here. So, this is an alliteration. Class 11 students will remember the poem, The Photograph. And in the last stanza, the last line of the poem is, it is silence, silences. So the S sound there is repeated. And that S sound is repeated because it wants to highlight the silence and the sorrow and the grief that the poet feels. So here again, this is what the alliteration is about. Now let us look at the next figure of speech. It's an onomatopoeia. Now what's an onomatopoeia? Onomatopoeia is a word that sounds like the sound it makes. For example, you may have seen children's storybooks talk about the choo-choo train, the chuk-chuk gadi, and the hissing sound of the snake, and all these words are the sound words. So the kettle began to screech when the water started to boil. Now, is it possible that a kettle will screech? It is not possible that the kettle will screech. It is just there to give you an idea of what kind of sound is being used. And so these are all known as vroom vroom of the bus and the loud noise of the crackers, which was perhaps like a boom or a thud. These all words are known as onomatopoeia, and they are able to bring the situations alive for the reader when you are reading a book or when you're reading a prose chapter or you're reading perhaps a poem. Now let us look at the next category, which is personification. Personification is another poetic device which is used where human qualities are given to animals, objects, or ideas. Now you are transferring the qualities of humans to words, an idea, or to an object, or perhaps even to an animal. Now that is not possible, however, if you look at this. The kite danced happily across the sky. Now these are qualities. Humans dance happily, but not kite. But still here, the kite is dancing happily across the sky. So here we sort of transfer the human qualities onto an inanimate object, which is a kite. Then let us look at the hyperbole. What is an hyperbole? It is an extreme exaggeration used to make a point. Now, when you say you're really exaggerating something, exaggeration means to present something in a very, very fancy manner to make it even more difficult or even more powerful than it actually is. Now, let us see how this is. I've told you a million times, don't wait until the last minute to study for the test. Now, is it possible to tell anyone something a million times? No. We don't tell anyone a million times, but this again we use this hyperbole wise so we can heighten the effect of whatever is being said. So the dog had million fleas in its body. Perhaps they were not a million, they may have been less than a million, but still the idea is to exaggerate. So if we say the queue outside the theater was endless, it couldn't have been endless if we look at the realistic opinion. However, the word endless serves to increase the exaggeration level of a particular statement. Now let us look at the last category here, which is an idiom. Idioms are common sayings, what we know in, using everyday examples to give a broader version of something. So this is what would an idiom be? It would be a muhavara. That's what an idiom compares to. And here it is. I'm going to try to catch some Z's. Now Z's is what? That person is going to go and sleep. But he says, I'm going to catch some Z's. It's just an expression. And as you read and as you study, when you actually start getting into language, you will find that these things keep coming across. These kind of figures of speech, you will come across such figures of speech very often. Also, you have to keep in mind that when you are reading the chapters or when you are looking at particular phrases or words, you are very clear about it. Because if you don't understand something, it's always better to discuss it with someone. So we have gone through these things. Now, there are other few figures of speech which I am going to share with you. And remember one thing, students, when you are reading, make sure that you read it at least 2-3 times. Because sometimes certain things will not be coming forward. And so here I have opened another chart for you, in which there are certain things which probably will help you as you read across. So now let us look at irony. Irony is a statement what is literally being said. That means whatever is happening is being turned around. So whatever you're talking about has been totally changed. So the fire station burnt to the ground. The fire station is itself burnt to the ground. So it's very ironical that such a thing has taken place. Now I will look at euphemisms. What are euphemisms? Euphemisms is the replacement of a phrase which might be deemed offensive by one and implies the same meaning but does not carry any offense with it. That means instead of saying the thing that he died, you will say he passed away. So these are words which sort of soften the entire effect of it and they make it sort of more polite. Now again, assonance. Assonance is something that you find a lot in poetry. And it is a similarity in sound between vowels in the middle of neighboring words. So, how now, brown cow, these are various examples. So, when you are looking at the rhyming schemes of various poems, you will find this. Alright, now let's look at antithesis. What is an antithesis? Of ideas which are contrasting in a statement that is balanced. Now, what does it mean? That means there is a contradiction or it's an opposite to a statement. So, man proposes and God deposes. So, this is an example that I am giving you. When you start reading, then you will be able to be more familiar with it. Alliteration we have done. This is another example. She sells seashells on the seashore. So, again, this is an alliteration where the S sound is repeated here. Anaphora. Now, anaphora is when a word is repeated multiple times within a particular phrase. So, they've given us examples. He had one apple, one banana and one pear. So, one is being repeated. This would be known as an anaphora. Now, let's look at an apostrophe. Apostrophe here is speaking to a subject or item that is not alive as if it were in fact alive. So now you're talking to something. So if you look at, for example, this example is here, but even if you look at other things, you talk to your car. You tell your car, chalo, chalo, will be driven, but we're talking to it as if it's a living object. So here the example says, come on trousers, you have to fit me. Alright, now look at it, chiasmus. Chiasmus is when two sentences are balanced against one another, but with the words reversed. So you change it. So work to live, but do not live to work. Hyperbola we have already done. So here the example is dramatic effect is being given. My bag weighs a ton. Nobody, I mean, can carry perhaps a ton, but it says it was a ton. So that's what it is. It's an exaggeration. It makes a dramatic sound effect or even otherwise. Now let's look at what's a LIFO. It's an understatement which applies a negative to using a negative to actually express the affirmative, which would mean that dress is not too bad, it was looking quite nice. You know, it's like saying, यार वो इतनी बुरी भी नहीं. Actually वो बहुत अच्छी है, पर हम उस चीज को कैसे बोलते हैं, that is what the light note would signify for us. So here students, we have, this will be helpful to you. Please look out for these various figures of speech when you start reading, and it will help you a lot in your further reading also, because I think some of you should also perhaps already do have a hobby and an interest in reading. So have a good evening and a good day.